Well, guys, if there's anything an episode proves us, it shows that everything is definitely about to change, but that does not necessarily mean it is a good thing at all. Hey guys, Camera for the Path, Season 1, Episode 9, Room 1 Zone, and holy shit, one episode. I mean, this was just crazy. I thought Episode 7, Refugees, that would be the episode that would be the best episode the show has given us, but no, this is without a doubt the best episode of the season. I mean, this episode is crazy, it sets pieces into motion, and really shows the direction I think next season is heading. Like I said in my intro, things are definitely going to change, but that does not mean any of this is a good thing. There are a lot of damage that's going to come with that change, and it definitely shows in this episode. But let's just get into this episode. There's a lot to talk about, starting off with the first scene, which I think was extremely well crafted and very well done. Just very good hidden details in that scene. Let's just get into it. The biggest thing this episode does is that it brings back some arcs that seemingly have seemed to go away and finally come back in this episode, starting off with the first scene where we see Cal is in none other than Cusco, Peru. And of course, what happened in Peru, that is supposedly where Jason committed suicide. And we see him go onto this mountain, and the look on his face, this is why Hugh Dancy's such a good actor, because just from the look on his face, I think that pretty much just shows. You can tell that is not a look of sadness or look of despair. That is a look of guilt. A look of guilt, and I feel it pretty much confirms that whatever happened, Cal had something to do with. Now, I don't know if Cal pushed Jason off a mountain, but something happened on that mountain. What happened on the mountain, I don't know. This episode doesn't really tell us, but I do think it definitely tells us that something happened on the mountain, and it was not suicide. Whatever it was definitely not suicide. Something else happened. It was not, Jason was not suicide. Something happened there. And we then see he's in the hospital. He's visiting Meyer, and he says that they can never allow their fear to limit the work of their spirits, which is what Meyer always told them, which he said to him often was when he was growing up, and said again when he got his diagnosis, also told him to not let the movement die. There are several scenes in this episode like this where we're cutting in between two different things. Now, this was very well done. He says he has tried to fulfill his wishes and tried to be his son. He wrote the runs. He tried to channel him, but if he's unhappy with him, to tell him because there won't be another chance. And he says he's sorry for everything that's happened, and he has done it wrong, as well as everything he does next. He knows everything he's done has not gone the right way, and he says he wasn't supposed to die, and it's really crazy because, again, I still kind of feel like Cal had something to do with Meyer's death. Just the way the scene is done definitely does show that. But then this is not even when the fireworks are really started, because right in the next scene already things are very intense. So, of course, last week's episode ended with Sarah basically finding out that nothing happened between Eddie and Miranda Frank, and that she was right all along. Nothing happened there, and we see she goes to meet Alison, because as we know, she now thinks that Alison and Eddie are in an affair. The fact that he's left her all these calls, and I mean, her accusing is not wrong. I mean, it seems like that's what would happen, but basically, she meets her at a diner, who tells her right out that she does know what she's thinking, but her and Eddie are not having an affair, and Sarah asks her why he called her 22 times in the last 3 months, and Alice says it's not her place to say, and Sarah says that Allison's husband left a journal. She took his file, and the journal was in it, and Allison asks where it is, and Sarah says she found it when she and her husband were staying in Peru, and Allison asks why it wasn't given to the police, because, that's what it should have been. It should have just been given to the police, but it wasn't, and Sarah says she'll understand when she reads it, and Allison says, finally tells her what's going on. I like that finally Sarah knows, which is a great scene here, but really sets off how crazy things really get here, because Allison finally tells her that Eddie is having doubts about the movement. He realized it was bullshit and didn't know what to do, and Sarah is clearly just pissed. You can just see the look in her eyes. She is pissed as ever, but Allison says that he loves her enough to take the walk and drink the juice, and who cares if he doesn't believe in the ladder in the sky, and she needs to get over herself, and it really does show the difference between Allison and Sarah. Allison is someone that, yes, definitely does care for Eddie, but she doesn't really feel this movement makes any sense, and she doesn't really care what he believes in, while Sarah is so devoted to the movement and is not even in love with Eddie. She's in love with the movement. She angrily leaves, and to her, it feels like something is dying inside, and you definitely do see that here. I think this episode pretty much confirms that Eddie and Sarah don't really love each other. They kind of just love things about each other, which I'll get into, and I kind of said this before, but definitely with Sarah, this shows she's definitely not in love with Eddie. She is in love with Myerism. That is who she's in love with. So Eddie and Hawk are on the last steps of their walk, and they talk about what they hope Sarah will be making for them when they come back. And Eddie tells Hawk to look, and they're at the house where Ashley's family moved to, and Eddie assures him that everything's going to be all right, and Hawk asks what happens if she kicks him out, and Eddie says he will not let that happen, and they walk to the house together, and that's what I was thinking, that they would go to where Ashley was, is where they're going, but that's not where they end up going. We'll get into that. But then we see Mary, and Mary, of course, we saw that scene last week where she was with Sean. She didn't flush the drugs down the toilet, but Mary is contemplating whether or not to flush her drugs down the toilet again, and Sean comes in, asks her what's going on, and there is no hiding this time. We see Mary close the door, tells him that she needs his help, explains that she started to take the drug when he was gone, but it hasn't been for so long, so withdrawal should only last a couple days, and she's gotten off worse stuff. He asks her where she got it, and she says she can't tell him, and asks if he's going to help her, and he says that they should just go to Betsy, and of course she doesn't want to go there because of everything that's happened with Betsy, and Mary says it has to be this way, and Sean and then flushes the drugs, and it's kind of, you can see the look in Mary's face that she's kind of upset about this, and I definitely did like the way they characterized Mary in this episode, because I said it last week, I think Mary's very confused, and this episode further shows that. And then we get the scene that really sets off things in motion. We see Sarah sees Hawk and Eddie returning home. They're greeted by many Myers, including Cal, many of whom have no idea of the doubt that Eddie has, and it's a great scene because everyone's just applauding Eddie back. They're thinking, oh, he completed this walk, it's fantastic, but they have no idea that Eddie felt nothing on this walk, and that he had this doubt. And Sarah gets out, hugs him, and it seems like it's gonna be a nice thing, but then she gets right to the point, which it really shows how savage she really is, and right away she gets to the point and says that she knows about Alison. That is the thing that sets off for where this episode goes and gives us probably the most intense scene we have had in this show so far. One of the reasons I think The Path is as great as a show it is not just because of the fact of showing, Meyerism and how deep a passion can get and things like that. It's also because, in reality, it is a family show. It really is about this family and the damage that they go through. And this scene not only shows the damage, but it also shows that this family is never going to be that kind of family again. Because we see, basically, Eddie goes right to Sarah. This is obviously after what's going on. And Eddie goes in the house later that night. He sits down and he asks Sarah straight out how she found out. She says she found his phone and then spoke with Alison. He asked her what happens now. She says she has no idea. He's been lying to her for months after she called Miranda Frank a fucking whore. Now that she thought she was going crazy because she knew something was wrong, but through all of it she trusted him, and he says he knows, but he didn't just know what to do, and she says he could have told her the truth. And that's the thing I love of the scene, is that they're both not wrong. Eddie obviously didn't want to tell her because he knew this is exactly how she'd react, but at the same time he could have just told her the truth, and there's that as well. And I don't think she'd be as pissed, well, she claims at least. I think she'd be just as pissed because we know how devoted and how much she cares about Meyerism, how God forbid anyone tries to get away from Meyerism. It's a terrible thing to her, really. I mean, that's really how Sarah is. I mean, you try to get away from Meyerism, oh, it's this horrible thing that you're doing, and basically, he says that she would have put him into a cell to be reprogrammed, and she says it would have helped, and he says that it wouldn't. And that's the thing about this episode, is that this is the episode where you can tell that Eddie no longer is having doubts. He is basically no longer following Meyerism. He does not agree with the ideals of Meyerism, and while he still kind of is a Meyerist, he doesn't really agree with anything that they do. He doesn't feel that this treatment is going to do much of anything, and she says at least she's talking to him about it and not some pod person, which is what he would have been if she sent him to a room to be brainwashed. And she asks him what he's talking about and says that she doesn't even know who he is, and he says that he's the same person, he loves her and their family and believes in the work that they do, but the rest is just fairy tales, and he doesn't believe in any of it. And she says that he's talking about everything in her soul. He says no one gives a shit, no one eats a cracker and thinks the body of Christ. And I mean, he's not wrong here. A lot of this stuff, it is hard to believe. And she says basically he says he realized on the walk that they are what matters and all that matters, and she says that they are part of something that matters and they matter because they are a part of it. And he says that she doesn't actually believe that. She says he doesn't know her if he thinks that. And it's just a really great scene because you see these two, they are kind of coming back together, but they're also very divided in their opinion. It's a very well done scene. Aaron Paul and Michelle Monaghan both acted the hell. The entire season they've acted the hell out of it, but this scene, really, I think they just both stated their cases. It really shows how divided these two are and really sets up the irreparable damage that is essentially going to happen to these two in the season finale. So Abe is then at headquarters and he tells McCluskey to not take him off the case. Now, like I said before, when McCluskey told him he was done, I knew for a fact this was not going to be the end of it. Abe is so devoted to this case, he wants to finish it. And McCluskey says that he can't make that call. He knows it, and he knows the IRS is going to sit on this for years. Talks about how he believes they killed Allison's husband, and he doesn't believe it was a suicide. It just doesn't make sense. And they take in some people, broken people, they lure them in, and they just don't let them leave. And yeah, that's true. I mean, think about Sarah. She doesn't let anyone leave. And McCluskey asks when his daughter's surgery is, and Abe says next week. McCluskey says to take a couple weeks off and spend time with his family, and Abe says the movement is only going to get more powerful, especially with Cal as their leader, and he's not wrong. We know how powerful the movement is becoming. I mean, the fact that they were able to get all those Hondurans out, things like that, and he says if he lets this sit for months, things are just going to get worse, and there will be even more casualties and even more consequences, and McCluskey says it's either that or he's suspended, and basically he's telling him, look, either you're taking a vacation or you're done, and tells him he'll see him in 2 weeks. Abe leaves, throws something on his way out, and just the inner rage in him is so present in this scene. I really love that. I love the way that was done. Sarah then goes to Cal's, and he says he wants to apologize for letting her believe Eddie had sex with Miranda Frank, and she asks why he didn't just tell her the truth, and he says he doesn't know, and she says that she does. It made him feel powerful knowing everything that she didn't, and he says that that's not true at all. He didn't know everything at first, then he was torn, he wanted to wait first if he did, and it killed him not to tell her. She asks if there's anything else, and he says that there is, tells her that Meyer finished the runs, and that means that he's leaving them, and that Cal is going to become their leader for good, and she asks when, he says soon, and she asks if he's going to come there and say goodbye, and he says he doesn't know, and he says he's going to tell everyone Meyer's plan at the next meeting, and then tells her that Meyer wants her to shape the next phase of the movement with him, and he wants them to be Guardians of the Light together, which this shouldn't come as a surprise. I think these, last few episodes, they've teased that Sarah is going to be a leader, and this episode definitely shows that Cal and Sarah pretty much seem to be endgame at this point. Not endgame in the sense that they're a couple, endgame in the sense that these two are going to stick together thick and thin no matter what, and Sarah then leaves, and you can see this is a lot for her to deal with, but she leaves anyway, and Hawk then goes to see Ashley at school, and obviously she's surprised to see him, because the last time it seemed like they ended things, and kisses him and they both say that they missed each other. He tells they need to go somewhere, and they go into a science classroom and they start making out, but she pulls away. She can't, make out with him right now, and he asks her what's wrong, and she says it's nothing, and he says to tell him, and we get this really sad truth that they're actually living in her mom's car. Zach's with a friend, her brother, but her and her mom are living in a car, literally, and he says he can help, and she asks how. He says that he can drop out of school, get a job, he can always go back, and she says that's crazy, and then asks what about Eddie and Sarah would think of it, and he tells her finally that he's leaving the movement, and that is, now we know exactly what he was talking to Eddie about. That is why he thinks Sarah's going to kick him out, because of the fact that he probably confessed to Eddie that he's leaving the movement, and obviously Eddie's not upset because he also kind of wants to leave. He can't, but he's wanted to, and he decided when he's on the walk, and she says that this is his entire life, and he says it's not anymore, she's his life now, and he really feels that there really is, he's going to be able to get out of this, and that this is not going to be the end of it, and that he's going to be able to get out. I think she knows deep down that he's not going to, but he definitely wants to, and I love the way that scene was done. Really good stuff there. At a meeting, Cal then congratulates Eddie for completing the walk after 10 days on the road, and Eddie then gets up, and if anything was, not set that Eddie and Sarah's marriage is pretty much over, this scene pretty much it defines that, and pretty much shows that Eddie's relationship with Meyerism is pretty much over. Of course, we know from last week that Eddie confessed to Hawk that he really didn't feel anything on the walk, that he was just kind of on the walk, he didn't think much of anything, but this scene pretty much confirms that he does not feel the same way as all the other Meyers do, because he gets up, Cal congratulates him on completing the walk, and Eddie gets up, says a few words about what the walk meant for him, and he talks about it. Everyone seems to have a big moment in the walk, but he didn't. He saw a lot of highways, broken bottles, broken people as well, and as kind people, fast food wrappers, roadkill, and the whole time he was thinking, how fast can he get home? And he says that that's what he found. No matter where he is, no matter where he is, he just wants to be home with his wife and kids, and they are his truth, and he says that's it, and the crowd seems shocked, but really touched, and it's a really great scene the way that was done, and we see that night, Sarah and Eddie are not sleeping in the same room. She goes down, gets something out of the fridge, he startles her, makes her break a glass, and he helps her clean up the mess. She cuts herself, he says he wants to see it, and she says it's fine, and she cries as he holds her, and it's basically her, you see see that these two aren't close anymore, but they have sex right on the kitchen floor, and you can tell this is not them close anymore. This is not really nice sex. This is angry, rough sex. This is basically them not wanting to talk about their feelings and pretty much just dealing with things, and them having sex is them dealing with it, just sticking to the norm, not wanting to go beyond and not wanting to really talk about what's going on. That's really the thing that sets that in motion. I really the way that was done, and just, you can just tell those two, they're not really together anymore, and it's really sad to see, but I really do think that's the direction that we're headed there. And then we get another really intense scene, and another really big reveal in this next scene. I mean, if you guys can't tell already, this episode really is non-stop. There's so much crazy stuff going on, but we see Sean is with Mary at a breakfast for all Myris, and he asks her if she's okay, and she says that it's hard to eat and her stomach isn't great, and then Betsy walks by and scowls at Mary, and Sean has seen that something is going on. He wants to know what's going on. He says he's gonna say something, and of course, we know why Betsy's giving her this look. He goes to Betsy, asks her what her problem is, and that's when it finally comes out. Betsy says to ask her. Sean asks what she's talking about. Mary says she did nothing and just forget about it, but Betsy is not gonna let her hide what happened and what they did together, because Betsy finally tells him that she fucked her and asks if she's using him for drugs too. He asks if that's true. Betsy says that's all Mary wants. They're the idiots who think that they're saving her. She's a junkie and a liar, and this gets Mary to then attack Betsy. They both start fighting, and Sean and another member literally have to get them to break it up. It's really crazy, and they both leave, and that scene was just crazy, but you can really tell that Mary has really been trying to hide who she really is, and this is her finally not getting to do that anymore. Betsy is not going to let her hide who she is from Sean. She's not going to let her do this to Sean anymore, and this is the end of that. So Abe is then at a bar. He gets a call from Eddie, who still thinks that he's Sam, and I'm pretty sure this is Abe no longer being Sam. Now he is Abe. So I can't really say that this is Sam talking. This is now Abe talking, because Eddie says he knows he hasn't been in the gathering the last few days, and he just wanted to check in, make sure everything's all right, and Abe says it's not. He says his daughter's about to check into St. Michael's and have her chest cut open for one, and he might have just lost his job, and Eddie says he's sorry. We've never really seen Abe this down himself. We see Abe says that he bets he is, and he says he's the perfect recruit right now in his last leg. That's how they like them, and Eddie says that they really do help a lot of people, and Sam says that he didn't go to gathering because it's bullshit, they're bullshit, and their light isn't going to help his kid get better, and tells him to stop calling him, and Eddie obeys, says he truly believes his daughter will get better, and he needs to believe that too, tells him to forget the light, but don't give up on his kid, and Abe then hangs up, and you can really just tell that Abe really had this hope that they would help his kid, but they've done literally nothing, and it's very much what Eddie's saying, that they don't really do much of anything, they don't really help anyone, and, they pretty much lie about it. So they're not really lying, they just kind of are in denial that they're not really doing much of anything. So Cal is then with Mary, basically trying to confront her about everything that's going on and everything that happened, and she says that she was lonely, and I love the way that they very slowly reveal that Betsy and Sean are there too, and Betsy says that she thought that Mary really liked her, she really liked her too, and Cal says that Meyer understood the challenges of bringing together a community of people with deep wounds, that's why they have to forgive, because that's the only way to heal, and tells Betsy to take a week in rehab, it should do her good, and he'll talk to Richard, and you really kind of see that he's not really doing much of anything by helping them, and he then tells Sean that he knows how hard this must be for him, he knows he came to them full of heartbreak, but perhaps this is what the light is getting in return, and you can tell that Sean really just feels out of place at this point. He feels like he really shouldn't have been there, and that maybe going away is what he should have done, and Cal says that Meyer believes that committing to people's wounds, past, present, and future, is a great challenging bit, but also the most rewarding experience one can have in this life. That's why marriage is the cornerstone of the movement, and basically Mary now is thinking of marrying Sean, which cannot end well, definitely. I mean, we can definitely tell that Mary clearly doesn't know what she wants. I think she thinks she knows what she wants, but she clearly doesn't, and I think that definitely does show that. So the Langs are then at dinner. Sarah says that she kept thinking when she was walking that they knew nothing of suffering, that they may walk 250 miles with no money, and their feet may hurt, and they see poverty and pain that they're in their own backyard, but for them, it will end. They finish the walk and end up in their beds, and of course, for other people, they don't. And she asks what Hawk, what he's learned, and he says he doesn't know, and you can see that look on her face. Again, just like Eddie, her own son saying that he doesn't know, really to her feels like a betrayal. And she asks him what he missed. He says his bed, and Summer tells him the cow was in his bed while he wasn't there. And Eddie says the cow is not their uncle and not family, and this is their family. And I love that Eddie's saying that, because they call him Uncle Cow, but he's really not their family. And, he's really only family to Sarah. He's not family to Eddie or to Hawk, because he hasn't really done them any good. And Hawk tells them that he's leaving. While he was on the walk, he decided that he's not going to take his vows at 16. He's going to stay in high school, and Sarah says that if that is so, he will never talk to her or Summer or anyone in that family again. And Hawk says that Eddie said he could and that it would be okay, and she says that he lied, tells him to eat because there are people suffering tonight. And again, we really do see how devoted Sarah is to this. I've never really seen Sarah as a terrible person, but I have seen Sarah as someone that is way too wound up in this movement. Definitely, you definitely do see that here. So Allison's then outside on a beach. She buries something. She's tearing out pictures of Jason's journal, and I'm assuming she's in Peru. We don't really know where she is, but she walks in the ice, and I was thinking that she might try to kill herself. That's what I was thinking that she was going to do, because the ice slowly starts to crack, and I feel like that's what they're trying to show here. So again, I don't really know what's going on with Allison. She has one more scene this episode. I don't really know where she's headed for this finale, but I really do like that, because it gives me this amount of, mysteriousness, and not knowing what's going on. I definitely really do love. Hawk then has his bag with him. The whole family stares at him. He tells them that he's leaving, and Eddie asks where he's going to sleep. He says he was just homeless. He can keep doing it. And Sarah says to let him go, and he does his ass. And Eddie tells her this is crazy. He's got to talk sense into him, and that's why he let him go on the walk. But he couldn't do that, and that's why basically they went on the walk, is the fact that she wanted Eddie to try to get through the Hawk. But of course, Eddie doesn't see things that way anymore. He didn't get through the Hawk, so that didn't really work out. And again, you really do see this as Sarah and Eddie just aren't really, together anymore. And he says that he was too busy figuring out if he wanted to stay himself. Sarah then leaves with Summer, and it really shows how divided Eddie is from everyone now. Even Hawkeye is kind of divided from. So Eddie goes to meet with Sarah's parents, and this scene, again, full of intensity. I love the way this was done. Eddie realized what is going on. They are surprised, and Eddie didn't know about this, and he says that he needs to talk some sense into her. They lost a kid, and they know what this is like, and they think that, and they literally think that he should go to a program. Like, Hank literally says, oh, we should just take you to a program, but Gabby says a program won't work for him, and Hank says that he has to. Gabby says he's gone. There's no trying. He says they have to try. He's their son-in-law. Gabby says he's not anymore, and Eddie says there's going to be some room for doubt, and this is what's caused the world to be in such shit shape. He says that they'll lose everyone. Gabby says it will be people who lack conviction and are cowards, and again, they are under this lie that this is what is right, and that this is what they should be doing, and Eddie then leaves the house. He thinks of what this means from, remember that scene we always get before The Path, where it's like, Hulu presents The Path, that thing that always comes on, new episodes every Wednesday. We finally get that scene here, and you see everything's kind of just spinning out of control for Eddie. It feels so it feels so unreal to him. It feels like this isn't actually happening. I love the way that was done, and just the surreal element, I think, is something the show just does very, very well. And we know that Eddie's been having these visions as well, and it looks like next week he's really going to try to figure out what those mean, which we'll get into. So Cal's then at a bar. The bartender, Amelia, asks him for a drink. He says he doesn't know, which really is more like an exotic strip club, but for him it's like a bar, and she asks what he does. He meets up with John, aka Freddie Ridge's father, and we get to one of the most interesting parts of this episode. I never could have seen this happening. This is probably the first time he actually treats someone that's a non-Myrus with decency. He doesn't completely shun them. He actually wants John to help him, which is very interesting, and I love the way that this scene is done here, because he asks John to help him with something, and John says that he's forgiving for him to make it up to him, and Cal says that's exactly right, what he wants to do, what he wants to do for thousands of people, what they did for Freddie, and John asks how much he's looking for, and Cal says that he's not looking for money at all. He already has tons pouring in, people that believe in them, and they want to contribute, but they're still in the dark ages. They might as well have their money under a mattress, and John says he wants him to handle his expenses, and Cal says that he wants expansion, real estate all over the world, offshore accounts, tax shelters, and John says they can set up a meeting, talk to some of his higher ranking members, but Cal says there's no need to do that, get anyone else involved. Their leadership structure is evolving. He'll be taking a more active role, including Sarah, but now it seems like he's kind of not including Sarah, and John says to look at what they're working with, and it looks like John is actually interested. So this is a good thing and a bad thing, because as much as I am thinking, okay, this is good that he's working with John, John does not realize what he's getting himself into. This could end up really bad. I don't really know what's going to happen with that, but Sarah then tries to call Silas, and I love that Sarah doesn't know that Silas is dead, and still Cal hasn't told anyone that Silas is dead. Why? Because I still think that he has this, fear and belief that Silas might not be dead, and I feel like this episode pretty much confirms that he is dead, definitely, but I'm not really sure. Definitely, the way that was done. Um, but basically, she leaves him a voicemail, says she's been trying to get to him for days. She imagines he's on one of his journeys and she hopes he comes back soon. She says she needs his counsel, but little does she know, of course, he's dead. And then she goes to Cal's house. He brings her inside. She asks why he's wearing a tie and she starts to cry. He tries to comfort her, which he does with a kiss, but she continues to sob and she tells him about Hawk and he said it's unacceptable. And she says that she needs him to help her. And just the look at Cal here, the way that he wants to help Ashley, the way he feels it's his duty to do this, I mean, it's really crazy to see. But Cal then goes to Ashley, and we get this really awkward scene between Cal and Ashley, but it's meant to be awkward. We see he tells her he's a member of Hawk's family. She could not be more dismissive. She really wants nothing to do with him, but he just says, I'll take you to where you want to be or whatever, and she's just like, all right, whatever. And she asks, and she knows kind of what this is for. She knows what's going on. She asks whose house it is. He says it's hers, it belongs to a member, and her mother won't know it's theirs, and he says he could see her at the desk studying for college applications, and he asks her where she wants to go. She says NYU. He says that she'll get in, and he says she just needs a room of her own, which everyone does, and basically he's using this if she decides to leave Hawk. That is what's going on here. If she decides to leave Hawk, he's gonna give her this room, and he tells her he needs her to put in some thought as to what's going on with Hawk. She says she knew it, and he says he loves her enough to give up everything. She says he wants to leave, and he says it's because he met her, and she sits down, and he says that's why he really wants her to understand what leaving will mean for him. And he talks about how Hawk grew up a Meyerist, and if he leaves, he'll lose his faith forever. Basically, everything else we've heard, how he's gonna lose his family, and he says she knows what it's like to lose a parent. It's boundless fucking grief, and she needs to imagine what it's like to lose her whole family, and Hawk may come to this decision anyway someday, but is he really ready to come to it now? And I love the way this next scene is. We see Ashley and Hawk, they've had a huge fight in the car. We don't know what it's about, but she ends up leaving in tears. It's such a great scene. Again, it's one of those scenes where there's like a dialogue and then this going on as well. I love seeing that, and really fantastic stuff there, because I mean, I pretty much think we saw this coming. We don't know what happened between Ashley and Hawk. We very quickly find out in a few minutes, but we don't really know at this point, which I thought was really well done. So Cal then tells everyone that Meyer has finished writing the last 3 runs, and they are revolutionary. The movement's about to undergo tremendous change, but again, that change does not really mean a good thing for the rest of the Langs. I mean, they're going to suffer irreparable damage because of what's happened, and this episode definitely shows that. So Abe then gets a knock at his door from Frederick, someone he works with, and he gives him a corner report from Peru from Jason Kemp, and we get a really interesting detail here that I don't think we knew before. He says he's off the case. Frederick says he knows, and Jocelyn asks if he wants a coffee or beer. He says he's on a date with his girlfriend in the car. Abe asks the evidence is that good, and Frederick says it's not good, but it's weird. And he says he does know how a guy burns his hand like this, falling off a mountain, and now we kind of know what happened, that apparently the reason Cal was on the mountain is because basically Jason supposedly fell off the mountain burning his hands. And here's the thing, if we remember that story of Felicia saying that she felt like there was this fire, but then her hands weren't burnt. I feel this is definitely trying to show that he was losing faith, and I feel like definitely Jason did lose that faith, so I don't really know what that's showing, but that's very interesting. I definitely am still under the intuition, under the, suspicion that Cal had something to do with this. I don't know what capacity, but I definitely feel it just makes sense that he had something to do with this. So Abe looks at this report, he does, and clearly you can tell he's really shocked and really enamored as well. He doesn't really know what it means, but he's very captivating. He definitely is destined to find out, and he's not going to not let this case go. He's going to continue it. Summer then tells Eddie that Hawk's back. Eddie asks him what's going on. Hawk says nothing, tells him to talk to him, and Eddie tells Summer to give them a second. Hawk says that Ashley broke up with him. Eddie hugs him as he cries. He says he's sorry. Hawk says one moment he's the most important thing in the world, and the next time too much responsibility, and Eddie asks what he's talking about, obviously, and he says he's giving up his life for her, and Eddie says that she's just going through a lot with her family right now. Hawk says she kept on going on and on about how he was special because Meyerism is special, and of course she doesn't even like Meyerism, and how Meyerism was the part of him that mattered, and she didn't want to take that away. And Eddie knows that this was not Ashley's doing, that someone else had to do this, and we get an incredible scene that I have to talk about, because it is probably the single best scene in this show so far, without a doubt. This entire episode is full of falling action, I think. I mean, I don't think this episode was rising action. I think this was falling action, definitely. And if anything, this episode gives us to that climax. We finally get to that climax here. I think this was incredible to see. We see Cal continues talking to the moment. Eddie drives to confront him, but he's not there to talk to Cal. He's actually there to talk to Sarah. Cal says that they will present everything in the next meeting. Then they will celebrate because Meyer will be coming. And basically, we realize that Meyer is supposedly going to be coming. Now, how he's going to be able to do this, because we know he's catatonic right now, I don't understand. But Eddie then comes in. Cal thanks him for coming, and he asked Sarah what she did to get Ashley to break up with Hawk. Realizes that she had Cal do it. He tells Cal to fuck off. He tells her she broke her son's, and he literally says that she broke her son's heart, which she did. You can see the look in Sarah's face. She doesn't really care, and she says it was for the best. He says it was so he could end up like all of them, just a bunch of fucking prisoners, and Cal tells him to stop. Eddie then punches him in the face. He falls down. All the members run to check on Cal. Sarah looks at him shocked, knowing what he just did, and Eddie looks at her in disgust, and these two will never really be the same again. You can see that's the look that Sarah gave him is a look of shock, knowing what he actually did, but Eddie isn't sorry. He knows why he did this, the fact that she didn't even care about her own son. He looks at her in disgust. It was an incredible way to end up, but it's not the end of the episode. We see Alison goes to see a man. He asks if he can help her. She says he can, and he opens the gate for her. We don't know what this means. She walks in, but that is how the episode ends. I think it was an incredibly intense way to end the episode. I absolutely love that, and really sets things in motion for what is to be a very intense finale. So overall, guys, amazing episode. I absolutely loved everything about this episode. It was intense. It was crazy. It was full of so much pathos and so much stuff put into it, definitely. I mean, there were so many big events that happened in this episode. But let's get to what's happened between Eddie and Sarah, because it really seems like next week Eddie's going to deal with why he's having these doubts and really what's going on and why he feels this way. So that's going to be very interesting as well, such as why has he been seeing these visions of his brother, because those went away, but he didn't have in this episode, but that doesn't mean it hasn't gone away. I feel like he is still having those. We just didn't see it here, but I feel like he definitely is still having those visions, so obviously what's going on there. This is definitely not the end of Hawk and Ashley. Those two are getting back together. I mean, it wasn't even Ashley's decision. Cal basically forced her to break up with Hawk, which she really did not want to do, you definitely know. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Is Hawk actually going to leave? There's one of them going to die, possibly. I mean, someone I think is going to die next week. I don't know who. We'll have to see what happens with that. Let's talk about this whole situation with Alison, because I don't fully understand what's going on there. I feel like Alison's trying to get information. I'm not really sure. We also don't really know where she is, if she's in Peru, what's going on there. Also, Jason's coroner report, definitely there's something there. I think that gives Abe conclusive information that Cal is responsible. This episode pretty much confirms that whatever happened, Cal is responsible for. I don't know what capacity, but I feel like Cal is definitely responsible. He wouldn't just, he would be responsible for this. Definitely something happened there. I don't know what happened, but definitely that's going to be very interesting as well. And then as far as Sarah goes as well, I mean, it looks like Sarah and Cal, they're going to be taking over the Myers movement, so that's going to be very interesting. And then finally, this whole situation with John, is this really going to work? Are they going to be able to, because it seems like, Cal wants the Myers movement to be a global thing. We'll have to see how that goes. That's going to be very interesting. But overall, guys, so much you guys saw this episode. Amazing stuff overall. I don't know how they top this, really. I mean, I'm sure they will in the finale, but really intense stuff. Really shows how distant all the characters are becoming. Really hard to watch at points, honestly, as well. But let me know what you guys saw this episode with your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next one, which will be for tonight's episode of Game of Thrones, which obviously I am hyped for, especially after the events of last week's episode, and I can't wait for the finale for this as well, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.